This is Duke University.
Welcome back to Duke, for those of you who are here today and haven't been here for a long time. My name is George Dorfman. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Alumni Affairs, and I'm here to welcome you today and to welcome these guys, these men, and thank them for serving on this panel. For the guys up here who are players, looks like we'd have a pretty good team if we put them all out there. We're missing a point guard, but I think Bob could do the coaching, right? Hopefully this will be the beginning of what will be a really fun weekend for everyone who's back. And for the panelists up here, this is they're here because this is their reunion too. So it's nice that they came back for this to see their classmates and to come back to Duke. We've got a couple of housekeeping things that I need to kind of run through quickly. First, this will be videoed, and I guess it's already being videoed, so that people in charge of that are asking that you do not take any flash pictures. Right there, last one. So hopefully we can pay attention to that. At the end, you'll have a chance to ask questions. So in the front, we have a couple of students that will be holding microphones. Just come down the aisle and kind of line up, and you'll be able to ask questions at the end. And the last thing is that because there's another performance later tonight, we kind of have a hard stop at 5 o'clock. So we'll have to wrap up then, and you can catch up with these guys outside of Page afterwards if you want to do that. My main job here is to kind of introduce our moderator, our referee for tonight, Bob Harris. Unlike most of the referees that we see during the years, we are fond of his calls, right? I know, that's pretty corny. For 35 years, Bob Harris has been the voice of the Blue Devils and the eye of Duke sports fans around the world. Duke fans have come to rely on Bob for his play-by-play, and many confess they turned down the TV and turned up the radio just to hear his call of the game. Bob is a friend to everyone at Duke and has recently published his autobiography, How Sweet It Is, From the Cotton Mill to the Crow's Nest. That is available for sale up at the top level, and he will be here to autograph them and personalize them afterwards if you're interested. Of course, Bob has called all 4 of Duke's national championship wins, and in 2006 was inducted into the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame. On a personal note, I first got to know Bob when I was a student and a basketball manager here in the early 80s. And even then, when I was 20 years old, he treated me and everyone around him with utmost respect. And as I've come back here to Duke and have worked with him again for the last 15 or so years, I've learned to admire him even more. He's a friend to everyone, and he makes everyone he associates with feel important. So we're very lucky to have him here today to help navigate this group. There could really be no better person to do so. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob, who will introduce our panelists, and off we go. Thanks a lot.
I don't know what to say next. I mean, but Jay, he wrote it. I mean, he read it just like I wrote it, so that's good. All right, I want you to meet, in case you do not know the gentlemen here on the panel to my left. We'll meet them one at a time with a few of their accomplishments, both at Duke and in later life. First of all, we'll go with the eldest to the youngest, I guess. From the class of 1966, Jack Marin is an attorney with the firm of Williams Mullen in Durham. He made the 1967 All-Rookie NBA team, spent 11 seasons in the NBA, and he played for the Baltimore Bullets, the Houston Rockets, Buffalo Braves, and Chicago Bulls. And I know some of the younger people are saying the whats, but they were moved, changed, transferred, whatever. But the left-hander was a 2-time All-Star in the NBA and scored over 12,500 points in his career. And he thanks his point guards still today. At Duke, he was a 2-time All-ACC and second-team All-America, Played in the national championship game in '64 and in the Final Four in 1966. He also currently is the chairman of the board for Hope for the Warriors, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Second in the eldest line is a 1981 Duke grad. He is a partner in an investor relations firm of Dennard, Rupp, Gray, and Lascar in Houston, Texas. I'm surprised he didn't wear his Stetson today. But Kenny played in the NBA before being sidelined with cancer and now plays a very active role in raising money and awareness for Coaches versus Cancer, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So, Kenny Dennard, class of 1981. Next up, right beside me here, Mark Alarie, class of 1986. He is a president for the compliance division of iCertainty Incorporated, an 18th pick in the 1986 NBA draft by the Denver Nuggets, but his career was cut short due to injury. A two-time All-ACC first-team selection and third-team All-American as a senior in 1986. He helped lead Duke to the national championship game that spring. Right beside of him, teammate, roommate, cellmate, no.
Just about.
Just about. We won't go there.
Am I older than him? Yes, you are.
He is a basketball analyst for ESPN and an attorney with the firm of Moore and Van Allen in Charlotte. And he was selected in the 5th round of the 1986 NBA draft by the Dallas Mavericks. Played professionally in Spain and Italy and helped Duke to the national championship game in 1986. He began his broadcasting career in 1986 at the end of one of those European seasons with the Duke Radio Network. And I'm taking full credit for his success.
Never let me talk.
That's the reason he says so much now and has so many opinions. I never let him give them. The youngest member of the panel is a 1996 graduate. He is now the associate head coach of the Duke basketball team. Chris Collins was an All-ACC rookie team member in 1983 as a freshman at Duke. He played on the national championship team and in the championship game, of the 1994 season in Charlotte. And in his senior year, he was a team captain and earned second team All-ACC. And he played overseas prior to getting into coaching. Now, as I said earlier, I want to ask two gentlemen up here who are very involved in two very, very wonderful charities that they will talk for just a second about those two. And Jack, if you would, tell us what Hope for the Warriors is all about.
Well, thank you, Bob. I've been fortunate to be involved with some work at Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, North Carolina over the last 3 or 4 years, and I was asked to serve on the board of an organization started by two Marine wives, and then with the help of a number of the officers there, launched Hope for the Warriors. And last year, as I said, I tell people, I missed the meeting, so they elected me chairman of the board. But anyway, it's a long thing to talk about. But frankly, it's the mission really is to make sure that no recognition, that they do not lose the recognition of what they've done, and that none of their needs go unmet. And it's a large challenge, and a number of organizations are doing it. You're probably familiar with a few of them. Hope for the Warriors is a relatively new organization, but these women have moved it from zero in 2006 to about a $3.5 million budget this year, just through their hard work, and it's a wonderful thing to be part of. I know I meet a lot of these young men and women who serve, and it's as good a thing as I've ever done in my lifetime, and it's worthwhile doing.
Thanks, Jack. And as I said in Kenny's introduction, his career was sidelined by cancer, and he has fought it, he has beaten it, he is a survivor, and has been very instrumental in Coaches versus Cancer and doing not just games, but a lot of the different fundraising ideas. Kenny, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, any of you who are not on my email list, there's probably a few of you out there are, but coaches, don't raise your hand, please. In fact, Jay's on the council with me. It's an organization of the American Cancer Society and the National Association of Basketball Coaches. That's the union for the college coaches, the Division I coaches, and it goes beyond that. But they got together about 14 years ago because of a guy named Norm Stewart who had colorectal cancer. He was saved by the doctor who I met this weekend in Houston. We had a salute to Norm. Norm said, "I'm the only living patient of this doctor still." And, but we try to get out there and spread the news, help raise money to fight cancer. All the money is really used for patient services, research, and education. Whereas the V Foundation, people might think it's competitive. They're not. They're compatible. Give to both if you do participate or any way possible, or any charities that you feel good about. But I've been fortunate having been a survivor, and it didn't sideline my career, actually. I really didn't have one.
I was giving you the benefit of the doubt.
But what it did, it saved my life. I tell people cancer saved my life, and I do a lot of speaking, and I meet a lot of survivors, and it's just a cool thing. But Jay's on our committee. He's very active, too, and a lot of the coaches don't get enough credit for all the stuff they do. You probably see when Chris wears his tennis shoes, they have suits and sneakers that weekend when they all wear. We haven't made a dime on that program yet. We're trying to figure out how to monetize it. If these guys next year, after they wear their tennis shoes and sign it and we do an auction, would y'all buy them? We're going to do that next year. Because they just, I don't know where their shoes go, but Phil Martelli said, "We haven't made a dime. Everybody knows Coaches versus Cancer because the coaches are wearing those shoes." Remember when Coach K fell out when he was wearing the shoes, when he hyperventilated and went, the shoes got a lot of pub that day. Anyway, I appreciate you, but I think most of y'all are aware of Coaches versus Cancer, and Coach K is a big contributor to that in his own way as well, and along a ton of other charities. But thanks for letting me talk.
All right. Do you realize that all 5 of these gentlemen not only played in a Final Four, but they played for a national championship? It's unbelievable.
Any of us win one?
No.
I wondered who was going to be the first one to say that.
That's why we're available, otherwise we'd be speaking somewhere for money.
I fouled out of mine.
I want to go on record, it wasn't my fault.
There's no record anyway. That's right. How do we know?
It's long gone, that's for sure.
And Jack is the only one of the 5 that I have not broadcast games for. As a matter of fact, almost every one of their games, even Kenny.
Yep.
So, but anyway, all right, guys, let's get underway with the Q&A, and we'll go down the line. I want you to each one to answer these questions. And so, Mark, we'll start with you, put you on the spot first, and that'll give Kenny more time to think about his answer. If you had to pick one and only one Duke basketball memory, what would it be? They did not have these questions ahead of time.
We could be here a while.
They have been hermetically sealed in a Duke's mayonnaise jar.
Do we go?
Is there a right answer?
I'm assuming there is.
Now, do we raise our hand who gets first? Or what?
No. Mark's going first, then we'll go down the line. Wait your turn, Kenny.
That's all I wanted.
Well,
Just want to know.
the best memory would have been winning a national championship, but as Bob's already pointed out, we did not accomplish that. I think about our very last game in Cameron. We played Carolina. I could not imagine losing that game for any reason, and I know my teammates felt the same way. We played such a strong game, and that was such a great feeling to leave the floor of Cameron as victors. And later on that week, we were ranked as the #1 team in the country. We went on to win the ACC championship in the tournament, and we came within 3 points of running the tables. Yep. But that very last game in Cameron for me is a very special memory, and so that's what I would say, because we whipped them pretty good. It wasn't really close. And the very first time we played Carolina when we were freshmen, those were not good outcomes, Jay. We were so overmatched, outgunned. I mean, use whatever adjective you want to use. I mean, they were not even competitive, those games we had against Carolina as freshmen. But then the next year, we beat them in the ACC tournament, and then we beat them our junior year, and we beat them our senior year, and we've been beating them ever since. So, you know, I like to think that we started the boulder rolling down the hill.
When
as
this
far as
one
that
game,
goes.
Bob, it's not a career.
I figured he was not going to get to talk that much later on, so we'd go ahead and let him.
It's a filibuster.
But I think that game in Chapel Hill that you lost, wasn't that the game that Michael Jordan hit Johnny in the back as he crossed the lane and didn't get called?
A lot of things didn't get called back then.
Now, Jay, you and Mark were, I guess, the class that jump-started Mike Krzyzewski's career. What is the one memory that sticks out in your Duke career memory?
Well, we were on the team. Dawkins jump-started Coach K. The first time I met Johnny, this was back before the internet and before, I didn't know what Mark looked like. I had heard of him. I knew he was an All-American in Arizona, and I knew Johnny was an All-American in the Washington, D.C. area, but I didn't know what any of them looked like. Didn't know whether they're black or white or tall, short, I had no idea. And I had really never been out of the state of California when I got recruited. And when my parents decided, when they dropped me off at school for my start of my freshman year, that they wanted to see a little bit of the East Coast. So we flew to Washington, D.C., we're going to drive down to Durham. And when Coach K found that out, he said, well, you need to get with Johnny. You guys need to get together. And so he gave me his address, and my dad drove me over there in his little rental car. And I went up to the door, and I knocked on the door, and this skinny little kid answers the door. And I said, hi, is your brother here? And he said, well, who are you looking for? And I said, I'm looking for Johnny Dawkins. And he says, well, I'm Johnny. And I was like, we're screwed. And he called a few of his friends. They came over in a car and picked us up, and we drove to a local asphalt playground. There must have been 80 guys there. And we played for probably 3 hours, and he was Superman. And I thought, we're going to be all right. I calmed down after that. The ride over, I was not too happy.
All right, Jack, it's your turn.
Well, I guess for me it was a game that wasn't much of a game, but it was the most. It was a game that there was no basketball played, and it was in the semifinal game of the ACC tournament in 1966, and we were ranked number 1 or number 2, and I don't remember which. Kentucky was in the other spot, and we played our friends over there in Blue Heaven over there, and they decided that after getting waxed pretty well twice, both here and in Chapel Hill, that they would not play basketball with us. And so I stood there and literally looked at my guy like this for hours, it seemed. But the game ended 21-20, and we were down 17-12. And as you will remember, the difference between then and now is that if you didn't get out of the ACC, you got to go to the beach instead of taking a good record into the NCAA. So somehow we squeaked out a 21-20. Mike Lewis, our sophomore center, made 2 free throws. But you can imagine that during that game, you had a lot of time to think. It was really a strange game, but thankfully the clock came in because of that sometime later. Kenny, you're on.
Well, I have a question. Was that in black and white?
No, it was all white back then.
I'm here for you.
Question answered, Kenny?
That's called an assist.
Which you never gave.
Oh, really?
No.
Really? Why is G-Man not here? It's my turn?
Yes, it's your turn.
Okay. All of you
want
who
the
bought
question
Bob's
repeated?
book, who didn't buy Bob's book? You have to buy Bob's book or I'll put you in a headlock. Page 184.
Oh, jeez.
That's
We're
it.
Page 184.
You got to read it. That's the best time I had.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm not kidding.
That's it. He's done.
You got a
Another
$1
assist.
Yeah, that is.
You can email me. I'll send you the passage. Since I wrote it, I have copyrights. Okay.
Page 184.
184. I'm not kidding. Is that it? That's it.
Well, all of us are fortunate. We've had so many great memories, being here and playing in so many big games. And obviously playing in a national championship is something you'll never forget. Really for me, probably my most memorable moment was really when times weren't so good. My junior year was when Coach K got sick. We had just been on the heels of 7 Final Fours out of 9 years. Top of the world, everything was great for Duke, and then all of a sudden the bottom fell out. And I was one of the guys here while that was all going down, and Coach K was out. We had a horrible season. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember that year, 95. And so in 96 was my senior year, and Coach was back, and we were playing okay. We didn't have a very talented team. Coach would actually, if he was here, he would say it was the least talented team at Duke he's ever coached. But I try not to take it personal, but it's hard. And Bob will remember we played a game over at Reynolds Coliseum at NC State, and at the time we were 0-4 in the ACC, and we were coming off the year before when we went 2-14 in the ACC. And we were taking everybody's punch at that time, and it was they were 0-4, we were 0-4, and the game was back and forth, and came down to the end, and I was fortunate enough to hit a 3 in the last seconds to win the game. We went on to win 8 of our last 12 in the conference. We got back to the NCAA tournament, and ever since that year, we've been the most dominant team in the ACC. So that was definitely a great moment for me, and definitely a special time.
All right, Jay, you get to lead off on this one.
It's our second most memorable
The
moment.
second most memorable. Yes. You got a good writer now. All right, all of you played professional basketball in various places. If you would either compare or contrast your pro experience, things you learned with it, to your career here at Duke.
My pro experience, I was drafted by the Dallas Mavericks, and when I got to training camp, Dick Motta was the coach, and he was very personable with all the players. When we would stretch out, we were stretching out for our first workout, and he came up and he'd say, Mark Aguirre, how you doing, Mark? How was the trip in? And then he said to me, Jay, good to have you. How you doing? And he says, how's the hotel? And I said, it's great. And he says, have you had time to unpack? And I said, no. He goes, good. I played over in Italy, and well, you laugh. The money there was better than the NBA. The minimum salary back then in the NBA was $75,000, I think, if you can believe that. I made more money in Italy than I could have made. Yeah, close. But I enjoyed the time. It wasn't the same. Once you got out of school, it was a job. So you had to produce. Especially, I got some really good advice. I think it was Vince Taylor told me when I flew over to Italy. He says, as soon as you get off the plane, start shooting. Because he said they understand production. They don't care about anything but you scoring. So start shooting. And my goal was to get 20 points by halftime. If I had 20 points by halftime, in the second half I could play to win. Because they didn't care about it. Afterwards, they looked at you, they wanted you to score, they were paying you to score, and they expected you to score. Kenny, did you play over there at all at the end?
I did.
They didn't have to tell you to start. They didn't have to tell you to start shooting.
Hold on.
But it was. Are you asking to compare and contrast? I mean,
Whatever.
It was. Here you were totally invested with the guys you were with. It was. You were playing with your best friends.
Yeah.
And when you're out of school, everybody, as soon as practice is over, everybody goes in different directions. You went the same direction when you were here in college. So it was an experience that, and everybody I talk to says, everybody likes it the 1st and the 15th when you get paid, but college was a lot more fun, and you had better relationships generally. It was probably a better time overall.
Jack?
When I was at Duke, there was no smoking and drinking in the locker rooms. It's true.
And that
Well,
changed?
that was probably the biggest shock of my life is to come to the NBA. And but to digress for a minute, I'd never thought I'd play professional basketball. I had convinced Bill Anlian and the admissions committee at the hospital at the Duke Medical Center that I was going to go to medical school. And then I realized I didn't have any money to go, so I took this lucrative offer from the NBA of $18,500, which has made me the third highest paid rookie in the league and the fifth pick in the draft, and went to the Bullets. And my first exhibition game, I'm sitting there, and there are four guys smoking in the locker room before the game and at halftime. So the difference was it really was a professional league, and we were just children when we were here at Duke. But the difference was dramatic in the sense that in my 3 years at Duke, we were 72-14, and as they drafted me as the savior of the Baltimore Bullets, I led them to a 20-61 season.
Mr. Brevity, you're up next.
That was my story. Except it wasn't cigarettes. Anyway.
And it wasn't in the pros that happened either.
Oh, stop talking. So, my turn?
Yes, it's your turn.
I actually didn't write my best story for Bob's book on this because I'm making it up now. No, the first time I was in the NBA, I was in it a couple times. I was drafted in the 4th round, the 77th pick, which is like, I don't know, first round now? I don't know. And I have to make the team. We've got 4 rookies: Steve Johnson, Kevin Loder, both first rounders, Eddie Johnson, second rounder, who played 18 years, scored 20,000 points or something. Eddie Johnson did. And I'm the 4th guy on that team. And I know I can make this team. I know I can make this team. So I bust my chops the whole spring training. I'm diving for loose balls. I'm doing stuff nobody in the NBA does. And,
That's right, he was.
the day before first game, I open up the press guide, and I'm in it. I've never felt better. I'm about to cry now. And I get the call from Frank Hamblin, who's assistant to Phil Jackson right now. It says, "Dog, come here, me and Cotton got to go. We got to see Joe." Okay. Maybe they're going to say, "Hey, you're in the press guide." No, he said, "Kenny, this is the hardest thing a general manager has to do." What? Cotton's there, Frank's there. This is the hardest thing. I mean, we got to let you go. We got to put you on waivers. Oh. What? I'm in the press guide. Are you? Wait, what? Hold on. Look, calm down. It's okay. Okay, now I'm in the press guide. Cotton told me I was going to make this team. Why am I not on this team? Well, then you can only have 13 guys for 12 spots. What now is 15?
15.
Yeah,
15.
13 guys for 12 spots. And we had 2 guys, Hawkeye Whitney and Leon Douglas, who were out of shape, hurt, couldn't be traded, and were making $450,000 a year. I said, well, trade them. Well, nobody will trade for them. They're fat. They're overpaid. I guess that's what we all try to be, right? So here I'm going, but I'm in the press guide. You can't cut me. Look, you gotta calm down. I said, look, so these 2 guys are in my way. And Barty phone. Joe's going, and Joe looked like Jabba the Hutt. He was, and I said, give me the phone. I got buddies in Jersey. I'll be on this team tomorrow. Frank's over there laughing like, Cotton's over there going, and Joe's like, that wasn't a game, but guess what? I got cut. I came back. I told Cotton I'd outlive him. I did.
I think the main thing that all these guys would say, and being fortunate to be on the staff now and have a chance to coach a lot of guys that play in the NBA and play beyond here, is like Jay was talking about, the difference is the camaraderie. And it's not only the time you spend on the court, it's all the time you spend off the court, in the locker room, at team meals, messing around on campus, just being college students. And, those are the things when you go up to the pro level, you just don't get. It's a business. You're on your own. The money's nice, but everybody's in it for themselves. Everybody wants to get paid. Everybody wants to do what they can do. When you're here at college, when you're here at Duke, you're a part of a family. The stories that we all tell and we all remember, some of them deal with playing in games, but a lot of them are stories at practice when coach was killing us, or, being in the locker room and cutting on each other, or, just things guys did at team meals, or what we did on road trips. Those are the stories, those are the memories you remember. And, guys, when they get to the pros, they'll all say that, all that, it's nice to be paid, the lifestyle is great, but nothing was more fun than the time I spent at Duke with the guys and the memories that we had.
Mark?
Yeah, I agree with Chris and everybody's comments about the college experience. There's no substitute. But it's not only your teammates that you have fond memories of, but your coach generally wants you to be there. He recruits you there and you laugh, but I was drafted by the Denver Nuggets, which everyone said, well, that's a great system for you, Mark. They're up and down the floor, and I said, well, who's the coach there? Well, it's Doug Moe. I said, well, didn't he play at Carolina? He said, oh yeah, but they wouldn't have drafted you if they didn't like you. And so
I played for Doug Moe too.
I know. Well,
that's why he didn't like Mark.
Yeah. Well, I was getting my ankles. Yeah, I was getting my ankles taped like one of the first 2 or 3 days I was there, and the trainer, Chopper. Chopper said, "So where'd you go to school?" And I said, "I went to Duke." And he goes, "I hate Duke. We have that Dennard guy, And anyway, I couldn't do anything right when I was in Denver. Fortunately, I got traded, the next year, but. I'd be in practice trying to keep up with Alex English, who averaged close to 30 points a game, and he'd be just schooling me in practice, and Doug Moe would, be yelling at me, "You can't stop anybody, And, that's an all-star. I'm a rookie, that's Alex English, of course he's going to score. I hate Duke. Why did we draft you? And, how do you answer that, Why did you draft me, But, the good news is you can find other homes in the NBA, so I was fortunate in that respect. But, no substitute for being here at school, and those are, far and away my fondest memories of basketball.
Did you ask Moe how good a defender he was?
He was. Doug Moe was defense. He couldn't score a lick. No, really. Doug Moe, if you look, you remember Doug, right? No? Was he after you or before you?
Before me.
Wow. You're that young?
I didn't even know where Duke was when Doug Moe was playing at Carolina.
I'll be. No, but Doug Moe played a lot of defense. In fact, that's the crazy part about Denver. Playing for Doug, first team to 150 wins. So I'll add one more thing to Doug. I played in the highest scoring game in NBA history. You can Google it in your little smartphone. 186 to 184, Denver versus Detroit. And I'm in the box score, 3 minutes, 0 for 1.
That's great.
But I was the reason it's the highest scoring game in history, because if Bill Laimbeer had not blocked my shot in the first half, we'd have won by 2 in regulation.
Only Kenny could make this afternoon about a Carolina guy.
That's page 212 in Bob's book.
I thought it was all about me. Carolina.
All right, guys, this is a two-part question. Each part is worth $1,000.
Mo was.
Jack, you get to start the answering, and I want to know who was the best player you played with at Duke, and who was the best you played against while you were at Duke?
The best player I played with at Duke, I didn't actually play with him. I guarded him in practice as a freshman. And until Leitner came here, Art Heyman was the greatest player in Duke's history. And Heyman may still eclipse Leitner, although I think Christian did eclipse him. But to see Art Heyman play, and I'm sure I'm talking to people here who have no clue who Art Heyman is, and some are young people, but Art Heyman he was not a good defensive player, but he was as good a rebounder as Duke ever had, as good a passer as Duke ever had, and as good a scorer without being a very good shooter. He scored 25 a game for 3 years. And so playing with Heyman and to come here and to try to guard him as a freshman was a scary business. He and Jeff Mullins, the other person I played with, who I was his understudy as a sophomore, those two together were the people who pulled me along to become the player I became, because they set such a high standard, and you just had to work just to keep up with them. Played against here was a guy at Carolina named Bobby Lewis from Washington, D.C., and he played also with a guy named Larry Miller. But Bobby Lewis was one of these 6'3" guards who could play forward, and he was a pogo. And you really couldn't stop him from shooting the ball, so you had to try to keep him from getting the ball. And through your college career or through your pro career, the one thing you do is there are people you just don't want to see on the floor against you. There are a whole lot of nights you're quite comfortable with who you're going to be. But when you were going to guard Elgin Baylor, for instance, or Julius Erving that I did, those nights were not fun to anticipate. The nice thing about Baylor was that Baylor would let you get yours anyway. But he was going to put a big number. I remember guarding Rick Barry one night. I was playing with Houston. We were in San Antonio, and I'm digressing a minute, but I'm playing Barry one night, and I held him to 19 in the first period. Those are the nights you don't want. And Bobby Lewis was the kind of guy over at Carolina who could do that to you too. So you try to keep him from getting the ball.
Jack, the reason Art Heyman was such a good offensive rebounder is he followed his own missed shots so well. Probably the best at that. He knew where they were going.
He shot it with the intention of going to get it.
That's right.
That's true.
All right, Mr. Dennard.
What was the question?
One part.
The
Best player you played with?
It's a one-part question. Who was the best player you played with at Duke?
At Duke. Well, I had 3 guys that averaged about 20. Mike Jaminski, Joe Spinarkle, Gene Banks. All 3 of them were ACC Rookies of the Year. I don't think that's been done 3 years in a row before or since. How do you pick from one of those guys?
Just say all 3.
The Hydra heads. I don't know, the 3 of them. I know, I just can't imagine saying Gene or Mike or Spinarkle was better than each other. But those 3 guys, like Jack said, they pulled me along. They ripped me out of the womb. They got me out. I mean, I was from King, North Carolina. Everybody thought I was black when I got here. No, they did. Who's that guy? I had an afro, but it was a perm.
By the way,
that was cool in the 70s. Right, chicks? Anyway, I'd say all 3 of those guys.
Did King ever get their stoplight that you were telling me about?
Well, no. Actually, Bob knows where I'm from. It's a small town, about 1,142 people for the last 60 years of the census. And everybody goes, how does that happen? Well, every time a baby's born, a man leaves town.
Toughest player you played against?
Oh, in the ACC?
Yeah.
There was a couple of them, but I have to say the one that's lingered in my mind the longest was Buck Williams, and page 214. Is that in the book? That's in the book. It's in the book.
Your explanation of the laws of physics.
Who wrote this book?
Bob wrote a book. You don't even know. I'm going to shove it down your throat. I'll buy it, and then he signs it, and then
Robin and I bought one about an hour ago.
Okay,
now that we know what's in it, we're going to get our money.
No refunds. No refunds.
Now, Buck Williams, and everybody who's ever seen Buck Williams play, they don't realize what an athlete he was. He played 18 years in the NBA. How come guys play 18 years in the NBA when they're around me? But Buck Williams, as everyone knows, fell on top of me after the ACC championship game. And then there was this hoop, he's undercut. Why didn't he get the foul shots? But he shouldn't. I wish he'd have gotten the foul shots. Because if he'd have missed them both, he'd have been the GOAT. He'd have been that Ernie Graham crack guy that was like later. Instead, he's got this fire in his belly that I did him wrong. And every time I was playing the NBA, G-Man was on his team saying, Dennard's in town. And he'd just beat, I'd say, Cotton, I'm hurt. I can't. But he would hurt me. But Buck, to this day, after 31 years, I've still not gotten a thank you card. Because if he'd have had to shoot those foul shots, he wouldn't be where he is today.
Mr. Collins?
Well, in terms of a teammate, mine is easy. Grant Hill. He's as you guys know, just to see him today at 38 years old, I think he's the second oldest player in the NBA, and you look at him and he looks like he's 25. He's so great, 6'8", so graceful, so skilled, so talented. And the best thing about being Grant's teammate was he was such an unselfish star. A lot of guys you play with who are superstars, they're stars, and stars tend to have big egos. And that's part of it. With Grant, he was such a great teammate. If a guy was open, he would pass you the ball. He encouraged you. You always felt like, I always felt like I was a better player because he was on my side. And, you couldn't, and obviously the kind of guy he is off the court. And he's as talented. I know you can argue a lot of guys, but in terms of talent, he's as talented as any guy who's ever been through this program, and a great guy. In terms of playing against, like Jay talked about earlier, one of the things when we were young and we played, like today, in today's day and age, they have AAU basketball and they have high school basketballs on TV, and there's all this on the internet and YouTube, and so all the top players know each other. They play against each other in camps. They see each other in tournaments. They play against each other in their high school teams. And when we came out of high school, like all you knew was names. You heard people's names. You got Street and Smith's magazine, and you saw who guys were. And so my senior year, I came out of Chicago, and I was the top player in our area, and I thought I was pretty good. And I was fortunate enough to be named to the McDonald's All-American game. So I it's in Atlanta. We get to Atlanta and we go to the first practice. And I'm walking in there. I got my head high, kind of chest up, thinking I'm pretty hot stuff. And all of a sudden I walk up and they're like, okay, you're going to guard that guy. And I look over there and he's a point guard. He's 6'3", about 210 pounds. And I'm watching him run up and down the court. And he's the fastest guy I've ever seen. And I said, I'm going to be in trouble. It was Jason Kidd. So needless to say, I had a rough week. And, it was one of the most humbling experiences. And then we ended up facing him at California my freshman year. And that was Bobby Hurley and Thomas Hill's last game at Duke. We played him in the second round, and they upset us. And I would say easily in college, he was the most talented guy I ever played against. And both those guys I named will be in the Hall of Fame, so I think it's not a bad assessment.
Kid is still laying out of bounds with the ball up on his chest.
Yeah.
I don't care what the official said.
Yeah.
You never have. You're right. The only argument I've ever had with the commissioner was that whether I could officiate better from the crow's nest than his guys could on the floor. Mark?
Well, Jay already mentioned that we played with Johnny Dawkins, and Johnny was the best player that I played with. Jay aside, I don't want to. But Johnny, just looking back, he really was if you look at, the key recruit in Duke's history. I've heard, different people make different arguments about who that is, and who really cares. But Johnny, decided to come here when it wasn't, there was no reason to come to Duke. We weren't winning, but Johnny saw in Duke, what we have today before it was there. He saw the great institution this was, and academically what it could provide for him, later on in his life. He saw all those things, and he also saw the great tradition and how, we could have a chance to revive it with this young coach whose name we couldn't pronounce, but believed in. And so Johnny, far and away was the most talented player. He was just unstoppable. And we were all, better players for having him as our teammate. As far as guys I played against, there's a pretty long list of guys that put some big numbers on me. But Len Bias was a guy I always had to guard. And
Yikes.
yeah, same year, same position. So for 4 years we battled, and he was an extremely gifted player. And had he not had the unfortunate overdose, would have been a great NBA player. But just unstoppable. I remember thinking, I was doing a good job guarding him. I remember thinking that during the game, and then I'd look at the stat sheet and go, God, 41? God, I had a hand in his face on every shot, and if I would have had a center maybe to stop some of those, those drives, but no, he was great. He was a great one.
All right,
I don't know how to start.
One Mark Alarie, wasn't it?
How about this one?
There's just so many memories of those. I didn't have to play against Johnny at Duke. I played with him, and he was the best player on our team. Of the guys I had to play against here, Mark was the best player, and by far. One of the things when I see Leitner's number up there, I always kind of make the argument that I don't think Christian Laettner should have had number 32 retired. Should have been him. When you think about when we left here in 1986, it was the most. That team won the most games ever in a single season that year, 37. And hold on. I'm not done yet. But when we graduated, Mark was the third all-time leading scorer here, and he played every minute of every game with number 1, with Dawkins. And after playing with Johnny, there weren't a lot of shots left over. So most of the great players that have played here have had their own team. They might have played with the guy, like you played with Art. He was older. And then he's gone, and you guys have your own team. We had the same team for 4 straight years, so Mark played every single minute with Johnny. And when you look at the numbers he put up of well over 2,000 points and 800 rebounds, and playing with a great rebounder like me, there weren't many available. But he shot over 55% as a perimeter player from the field. That's remarkable.
We all had two 2000s, and you were over 1,000.
Yeah, we were the. I think we're still the highest scoring class in NCAA history. But we took a lot of shots. But I still think that should be fixed. That's something, they dropped the ball on that, and they need to fix that.
32A?
The best, that's, what page of your book is that, Bob? The best player I ever played against was our first game in the ACC. Was I think it was in December. It was before Christmas. We played against Virginia, and Virginia was ranked number 1, and I had to guard Ralph Sampson. And, I thought I did a hell of a job. I held it like Jackson. I held him to 36 points, and against a lesser defender, he would have had 40. He was by far the best player.
All right, we're going to change up a little bit now. Think about this one for just a second, guys. If you could ask any other panelist one question, something you've always wanted to know, what would it be? Nothing that personal, okay? We got to set some parameters.
I think Kenny's going to get all the questions. What was it like?
Okay, whose turn is it to start this one? Dennard? We'll put you on
Don't let Kenny start.
We'll put you on the offense first.
I pass to the gentleman to my left. No, I actually do want to ask a question of Jay Bilas. And this is really something we made out earlier. Jay Bilas, tell us how you got the role in I Come in Peace. How did you become what was it, the bad alien? That's the credit, the bad alien, Jay Bilas. He's got the ponytail, and he's sucking the snot out of people's foreheads and shooting it in his veins. Charlie Sheen wasn't even born yet. Well, how did you get that role? What were you thinking?
This actually, Mark was involved in this a little bit. I had done a commercial after I got out of college where I played a basketball player. It was actually quite an acting job for me. I really had to reach back, and so I had gotten a.
Was that the Canon? Sure.
Yeah. I'd gotten a theatrical agent, and the guy asked me if I'd ever done any acting. I said no, and he said, "Well, let me send you on some reads for parts and see if you like the process." And I went on a read. I wound up getting the part, and I played this alien cop in a movie. And they had to, this is easy to imagine now because I have no hair left, but I used to have a lot of hair. And they had to shave my head from the middle down to the front, and then they put hair extensions in so I had hair down the middle of my back. And we filmed most of it in Houston. And so Mark was playing for the Bullets, and they were staying at a local hotel there, and I was going to go see him and grab a bite to eat. So I get there, and I've got no hair up front and a big old ponytail, and I saw Mark and some of his teammates, and Mark knew I was doing this, so he didn't really flinch. I think you'd seen me before, maybe when we were in LA or something. And one of his teammates says, "Man, Bilas flipped out after he didn't make the lead."
That's pretty good.
All right, Chris, who would you like to ask a question of?
I'd probably like to ask Jack, how do I become a better golfer? Since you were the top golfer, non-professional golfer in the country. So,
Well,
That's over 6'10".
I'm the best 6'7" left-handed red-arm golfer in the world.
for you guys who don't know, Jack is in a scratch golfer?
Now I'm a +2.
A +2 handicap.
Below scratch. But anyway, I digress. But
No, well, why don't you talk about then how did you get into golf from basketball?
My fraternity here was a big golf fraternity. We won the intramural fraternity championship. As a matter of fact, I didn't play on that team until the last day when they really needed somebody in my fraternity. And the day before, I shot my low round of all time, which was 85. But our team was really good, and they said, "You just need to come in here and get it done for us on Sunday, and we'll win the intramural championship." And I don't want to say I was playing badly, but the two guys I was playing with played through me at 17. They said, "Y'all catch up with Jack. You keep keeping your score and catch up with us, and we'll be in the clubhouse." But I shot 101, and we still won the intramural championship. But it got better after that, Chris. But my secret is that I ran into a teacher some years ago who taught me to play as an athlete and to use the skills that I have as my eyes and my hands, and the game has been infinitely easier, more fun, and I go lower a lot more often. So this whole idea about playing finger on a golf swing, you figure out how to hit a golf ball with your hands, and it works better for me that way anyway.
Okay.
I have had the opportunity to play golf with Jack one time at a tournament, and he was a scratch golfer that day. He stood around scratching and says, "How in the world did Harris get in this tournament?" All right, Mark.
I'd like to ask Chris Collins a question.
Okay.
So,
No critiquing our coaching this year.
no, I won't go there. I never go there.
I'm just kidding.
It's in the form of a question.
But your father's done a great job coaching in the NBA. He's having a great season this year with the Sixers. So you've been up close in like the NBA environment. You've seen what it's like to be a coach there. You've seen what it's like to be a coach in college. You are a coach in college. I know Coach considered going to the NBA, or maybe he really didn't. Maybe that was just a negotiating ploy. But why? My question is, why would knowing what you know about both worlds, why would someone want to coach in the NBA?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think the thing that's been great for Coach is having the experience with USA basketball has been great for him, because in all coaches' minds, you always have that little part of you that would love to coach the best players. You know, I mean, you've done it at a high level. Coach has won everything. And I'm sure there's part of him that's always, you know, what would I be like if I could go up there and coach, and could I be successful? And obviously the answer is yes. I mean, everything that Coach K has done in college, he could do in the pros. You know, I think for him and us that know him, the thing that appeals about college more than anything to coaches, his coaching style is so based upon relationships. And I mean, he's very good at X's and O's, but the thing that he does better than anyone I've ever been around in coaching is his ability to get the best out of the group that he has, and to motivate a group of guys to be a part of a group. And he makes everybody who's a part of the team, whether it's the managers, the best player, the walk-ons who aren't playing, he makes everybody feel as if the job that they bring to the table is the most important aspect to us winning the game. And, you know, you can't do that in the NBA. I mean, the NBA, it's a whole different animal. It's all about strategy. It's about X's and O's. It's about managing egos. It's about, you know, just a whole bunch of different things. And you know, what Coach K does so well is he meets with our guys all the time individually. He gets to know them, and there's just a trust there, and, you know, a level of relationship that's there that is so strong, and there's no way you can do that in the NBA. There's too many games. There's too many people involved, too many egos, and he knows that. And, you know, it's been great for him to have the USA basketball experience, because he's been able to coach Kobe and LeBron and Derrick Rose and Kevin Durant and all these guys and win and be successful. And that's been great for him. But at the end of the day, he knows where his heart is and where his strengths lie, and that's in college. And we're all fortunate that he does feel that way, because we're lucky, and it's a special era to be a part of, because I think, you know, you look at what he's done over these 30 years, and, you know, I think what's special is for all, I mean, obviously Jack played for Coach Bubas, but all the rest of us, you know, we're all bonded by being a part of Coach K. And because of that, we have built friendships, and we can tell stories, and you know, what he's built at this program, and for all of us to be a part of it is a special thing, and it's something that I pinch myself all the time. I mean, it's one thing when you play for him, and that's great, but I know Jay and I both had the opportunity to be on the staff with him, and that's when you really truly appreciate his greatness, because it's the behind-the-scenes stuff, you know, meeting with guys, the teaching, the maintaining the program, I don't know how the guy has the energy to do it. I mean, there's plenty of times during the year I find myself exhausted, and I look at him, and he's accomplished everything he accomplished, and he's running around, and he's fired up like he's never won a game. And to me, those are special qualities. So, you know, to answer your question, I think at the end of the day, he knows where he is where he belongs, and we're all lucky for that.
But also, Hubie told him one time, I heard it at one of those things, he said, look, the key to success in the NBA is to keep the 5 guys who hate your guts away from the 5 guys who hadn't made up their mind yet.
That's good. That's good advice.
Did anybody understand that? All right, Jay.
I'll ask Mark, because I haven't asked him this before. I had dinner at the Final Four with Dawkins and Amaker and Jeff Capel. And Capel asked a question. He goes, "Why did you guys come to Duke?" And Dawkins had an answer. First of all, I didn't know he visited Providence. Did you know that?
No.
I didn't know that. But he had a good answer. I've never asked him, why did you decide to come?
You sure you don't want to ask Kenny a question? Well, I was one of the last. I was the 5th commitment. We had 6 members of our freshman class, the class of '86, and Jay was one of the first, if not
I was the third.
The third.
You were right. You were 4th.
Yeah.
You were right after me, because then it was Dawkins and David was last.
So I knew I could play a lot, you know, given, you know, Jay was going to be there, and I was going to be battling him for a position.
Mahar was there.
No, you know, it's I consider 3 schools that have a lot of similar qualities. I considered Stanford and Notre Dame and Duke, and you I did not foresee myself playing in the NBA. And, when we were in high school, there was not an AAU, platform. I mean, it just wasn't, it probably existed, but it's nothing like it is today. It's the commercialization of amateur sports is just astounding from the time when we played. The goal for me was to get the best education I could, and so I think that was, really tops on my list. And Coach K, although he was very unproven, was far and away the most passionate coach that I spoke to and that visited with me. I had one meeting with Marv Harshman, who was, is he in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I think so.
He could be. Yeah, he was the University of Washington coach. He was an older man when he came to visit me, but he literally fell asleep while he was sitting in my living room speaking to my mother and I. And
you must have been talking.
Could have been.
And you wondered how these two guys lived together as long as they did.
Nobody heard it, though. Yeah. Speak to your mic.
But the truth is, I made a very lucky guess with Coach K, and also joining the group. I knew that we were going to be a very good class of players. I mean, there were 6 of us, and we were all highly ranked. And like Jay said, we didn't know what anyone looked like, but we knew that we were going to be. We were the number 1 ranked class in the country that year by most of the experts. So I knew I was going to be a part of something, at least good, if not great. And I couldn't think of a better school to come to.
Even Bill Jackman, who transferred, came to your last
reunion. Yeah, he came to our last reunion. Yeah.
God leaves school, comes to the last reunion. Then we find out he's in financial services and wanted to. Hey, Jay, let me have your card.
Jack, it's been so long. Did you get a chance to ask a question?
No, I've forgotten what the question was. But I have been plotting my question here, and it's one that maybe some of you all have for this current coaching staff.
Okay.
When I was at Duke, we were 99-17, and the way we finished games generally was that, as Bucky Waters would say, who's the fellow who recruited me to come to Duke, his view was, when thine enemy is down, kick him. And we generally ran teams out of the building as often as we could, and we got to sit down for about 4 or 5 minutes of those games because of that. And obviously worked, and I can't remember many times when we were up 12 or 15 points that we ever finished at least up 15 and often up by 30 at that point in time. So it worked for us that way. Now, the answer to your question, I'm going to tell you what your answer, the short answer to the question is, Chris, is the answer is it works. Because what you all do when you get somebody down is their view is when thine enemy is down, torment him. And that is to say, you guys we would go into slow down in a tight game, maybe with 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to go. You guys go into the slow down at 6-7 minutes to go when I'm sitting there saying, blow these guys out. Now, I will answer your question for it. It works just as effectively as what we did. And I'm curious if there's a philosophy behind that explains that.
No, obviously everyone
Before you
has
answer
their
this,
opinion.
hold on. You signed the paper. You weren't going to ask that.
No, it's,
Did I sign a paper that said that?
Yeah.
I withdraw the question.
No, I'm just kidding.
a lot of how we don't have a philosophy to answer your question on, is there a certain time that you want to start killing the clock or manage the game? And really, Coach K is always coached by feel. That's the way he does things. You look back at the national championship game last year, and everyone, should we have missed a free throw? Shouldn't we have missed a free throw? There's all kinds. Do you foul when you're up by 3? Some people say yes. Some people say no. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and the main thing Coach K tries to do. A lot of instances, like in those games, we might have 2 guys on the floor with 4 fouls, and we're trying to manage a game because Singler and Smith both have 4 fouls, and what if we're still running, somebody charges, gets a foul? There's other factors involved in a game, and there's no question when a team is down, you want to try to put them away. And for the most part, sometimes it backfires. Sometimes, you lose a rhythm and a team comes back and maybe steals a game late. For the most part, the way coach is coached is by his own feel, and it's been a successful formula. So, there's, like I said, there's a lot of different ways, and I agree with what you're saying. I mean, when you have momentum, you want to keep it going. But a lot of times in a game, there's other factors, whether it be foul trouble, whether it be fatigue. Sometimes, we don't have generally a deep team. Maybe we're only playing 6 or 7 guys because of injury or what have you, and we're trying to get through that and get to the under 4 timeout, with our guys on the floor with the double-digit lead. So, certainly it hasn't worked at times, but judging by the record, it's worked pretty well. So, it's...
Let me just say this. It's not that it doesn't work. I can only remember one game that all the ones I watched and sat there and said, God, this is agony. But I mean it. I can only remember one game. I'm not even going to talk about that game, but I can only remember. I'm saying that it works. I was just wondering.
Yeah, there's no real philosophy. Yeah, a lot of it is coach's feel, and that's what he says. Like he has always felt in coaching, the head coach has to follow his instincts. You can take input from the assistants. And, we give our advice and he takes our advice and he wants us to speak up and we certainly do that. But at the end of the day, he's going to go on his instincts and he's always coached that way. And he's always told us as young coaches, like you always have to follow your instincts. And because at the end of the day, the head coach is the one that has the best pulse of his team. And, unfortunately, like you said, it's worked pretty well.
Well, really, Jack's issue is that he always flashes back to 19 to 19, and we win with 2 foul shots. I mean, that it's a flashback. No, not again.
That could be it.
Yeah.
That'll be a $20 copay.
All right, we're going to switch gears again, not because I've run out of questions, I'm only half through, but we promised questions and answers or questions from the audience. So we're ready to start taking those. If we have our microphone holders, we got the fellow right here, if you'd make your way out there, or just identify yourself quickly and give us your question.
That's on, right? Okay. Steve Bonwich, class of 71. The national championship game, this is really for the whole panel, anyone who would like to address it. The national championship game Monday night was not really a good display of basketball, and I think most of us would probably agree. Tuesday morning in the Washington Post, John Feinstein, another Duke alum, wrote an article and basically said that what we saw on display was a result of what happens today, where the kids decide to leave school early, that just a kind of a culmination of a lot of things that are occurring. They think about the NBA, they're not worried about fundamentals as much. And that what we got was a product of what is happening kind of in
John
college.
also mentioned global warming.
And global warming, you're absolutely right. Absolutely. Global warming and the threat of the budget shutdown, too, I think was it. But, so we've heard from Kenny already about his theory, but how about, I would just like to hear what the panel thinks about what we saw and what's changing in college basketball as a result of that.
Jay, I think you referred to it as the game should have been in black and white.
Yeah.
But,
There's no question that there's been a talent drain in college basketball that's been a result of early entry. It has nothing to do with sort of the quote-unquote one-and-done rule. There's no such rule. There's an eligibility rule for when a player can come into the NBA and be drafted. But years ago, it started in 1995 when Kobe Bryant and Kevin Garnett were drafted out of high school. And from that time forward, we've lost our best players early to the draft and to the NBA. So over any 4-year period, we're losing maybe 100 players, and you're usually losing your top 100. So there's no question that the quality of play is not as good as it used to be. I should not be able to say that the teams that played in the 80s were as good or better than the teams now. That should not be the case, but it is. And it is primarily because of talent level. And also the greater talent, the best talent now is younger. So, usually experienced talent is going to beat young super talent. And, but part of it also is the way the game is called. Years ago, we looked at, I'm on the competition committee for the new officiating LLC that the NCAA has, and we had a meeting at the Final Four on Saturday.
And we looked at game film from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and up to today. It's remarkable the changes in the game. You cannot make a pass now without it being contested. It's nose to nose, shots. If a guy cuts through the lane, he is going to get bumped, period. The game is much more physical. The college game right now is more physical than the NBA. More physical than the NBA. And that's not just me saying that, that's NBA personnel saying it, that they have a hard time scouting the college game because it's so physical. So, you know, if you're taking away the freedom of movement from your best athletes. And that's part of what happened. Now, John Feinstein's, part of his argument was the dome shooting. That had nothing to do with it. Dome shooting percentages are no different than other shooting percentages. That's been proven over the course of years. So that's not an issue. But there's no question, the talent level's down. And the NBA's got to get a hold of it. The NBA is being hurt by early entry too. And so their league is younger. They've got a lot of unproven talent on their benches. It's changed the way the league operates.
Jay,
they're trying to deal with it, but it's going to take a while.
Can I argue the point about the dome?
Sure.
I played in domes back in long before, cable, shit. So here we go. The domes are, yes, that's what you said, but they were configured different. Ever since they've gone where the basketball court goes in the middle of the football field instead of in the end zone, and they build bleachers around to create almost like an arena feel, I believe it is different. We've only had 3 regionals, or 2 Final Fours, 3 Final Fours, and 1 regional in a football setting. Detroit, Houston twice, and last year in Indy. These football stadiums, if you put the goals in the corner, that's different than being in the middle of the field, in my opinion, because the floor's raised 4 or 5 feet. The people are down below. I mean, the aspect ratio for a shooter has changed from the old dome style. So that would be my
They're not ideal. There's no question they're not ideal.
But they were not as bad as
But they're not
this
18%. Right. Butler shot 18%.
But they're under 40. All of them were under 40.
Well, but I think all those teams would have shot under 40% if they played in their backyard. We didn't have there wasn't a great team. Last 2 years, there's been a little bit of an anomaly. I don't think there was a great team in college basketball last 2 years. There were very good ones, but there weren't great ones. And I think if you had put any of the teams in this year's field in 2008 or 2009, none of them would have made it out of the second round of the NCAA tournament. I really believe that. So that was a little bit of an anomaly. But the game's different now. And until the NBA fixes its early entry problem, college basketball is reactive to what the NBA does, and it's affected by everything the NBA does. And so until the NBA gets a handle on what they're doing, it's going to continue to affect college. And there's nothing that we can do about it. We can sit here and say, well, that shouldn't be. There's nothing we can do about it. Kyrie Irving is not wrong for leaving. But, it's funny how they say that, well, the NBA, it's un-American to keep a kid out of the NBA. The NBA shouldn't have a rule that keeps them out. But nobody says that about football. Football, it's 3 years, and that's it. You're in college for 3 years, doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter, Herschel Walker, you can be the best player on the planet. You are staying in school. And they have made that a business decision that it's in the best interest of the NFL product that their talent stays in school. And basketball has not seen fit to do that. And until they do, the Players Association and the league, we're going to continue to see this.
And I'll add one thing for Jay. If you don't have Twitter, if you're not on a Twitter account, get a Twitter account and follow this guy.
That's right.
He's the funniest man on Twitter.
Jay, you mentioned the other sports plans. How about adopting the baseball plan to basketball?
They could. That would be a compromise solution. I think what they'll probably wind up doing is baseball is you go out of high school. If you're not drafted out of, you can be drafted out of high school and go into the professional baseball, whether it be the minor leagues or the majors. But if you go to college, if you don't accept that draft, if you don't go into the league, then you're not eligible for the draft until 3 more years. So essentially after your junior year of college. We could do that, the NBA could do that, but it's beyond me how the Players Association doesn't say, well, wait a minute, we could keep, high school players aren't in our union, and if we keep them out longer, we keep our jobs longer. But they don't look at it that way because the agents run the Players Association. The agents tell them how to vote, and the agents run it, and they want the kids in sooner so they can make more money off of them.
All right, next question right over here behind you.
John Woolman, class of 1986. My question is, what was the best Duke team ever?
I can tell you the best Blue Devil ever. That 92 team is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Jack?
Well, I think any of the teams that won national championships, I don't know how I would rate them, but the 92 team was special, and especially since it was a large part also the 91 team. And followed the 1990 team as well, right?
Yeah, but the 92 team had Grant Hill on it in addition to all the 91 guys. And
well, that's I understand.
yeah, that was a good team.
That was the time
That
that
was a good team.
after that game in, what was it, Minneapolis where they won?
Yeah.
With Grant?
Yeah.
One of my buddies was coming up the steps and he was like, "Hey, dog, you're getting your number retired. And Grant's name's going to be on it." I've been using that since then.
Other questions? Okay, over here in the corner.
Ken Pugh, 1970. Jack, first I have to say, you were part of a factor in me deciding to go to Duke, your teams. But I also have to ask, given the fact that now we have 4-minute timeouts and the Kentucky and Connecticut game, what do you think is the difference in the physical ability between then and now of the players?
Was that to me?
Yes.
Hold on, let me turn it up.
All right. No, I was thinking as Jay was talking about this championship game on Tuesday, is that I was thinking that that my solution to making the game better is that the floor needs to be wider. And the reason I say that is that if you watch this team, it seemed to me that what UConn had was it had 5 or 6 or 7 people who could chase people anywhere at any time. They could leave their men, and with the ability both to bump somebody, to slow them up from getting where he could go, they could leave their man, but if they needed to get back there, they could almost meet the pass wherever it went. And of course, the passes were being contested. So the speed of play of some of these teams is so great that I mean, of the 64 shots that Butler took, I think they may have gotten 15 to 18 decent looks, and the rest of them were rushed shots or wing and a prayer shots. I mean, they didn't take very many high-quality shots at all, and I think it was simply because UConn coaching staff got their players to believe if you chase these people everywhere, they will not have a chance to score against you. And that's essentially what happened. And when we played, we did not have that kind of speed at all. It just was not the floor was big enough for us.
And you had to keep your hand on top of the ball, right?
In fact, I would have hoped that they shortened about 20 years. Yeah,
All right, over here on the second row.
Hello, Nancy Hogshead Makar, class of '86.
She should be up here, we should be down there.
You were talking about what the changes have been in college sports with, how it's very physical and whatnot. And I'm interested in how you think that comes from the new system that we have now with developing players starting at these all-star teams that are 8 years old and 10 years old, and they amp them up and just get a shot off. And, it's not just in basketball, but it's lots of sports, doing it year-round very, very early. And I wanted to know if you thought about how the youth sports is impacting the state of college sports today.
It's definitely impacted it, but I think it's not just in sports. I've got 2 teenagers, and they're asked to specialize in things outside of sports. I mean, it's remarkable how much more they're expected to do just to get into college and all, to be competitive. I tend to think that it has to do with the way the game's administered. There's been one really interesting thing that's come out of my participation in this competition committee, and that we've studied all this different kind of data, and the game evolves, and the game was more physical in the 70s than it was in the 60s. It was more physical in the 80s than it was in the 70s, and so forth. I mean, it's gotten to be a really physical affair. Now, the NBA's gotten physicality out of their game. They've taken it out because it's a business decision they've made. They want scoring, and they want their athletes to be showcased. And we don't do that in college. But one interesting thing in all the data we've looked at over the years, from the 50s on, we've looked at every piece of data you can, include field goal percentage, scoring over time, and we've had some pretty big changes in the game with the three-point shot and the shot clock and all these things. Everything has fluctuated over time, except one thing. The number of fouls called per game has been a straight line. It is fluctuated only from 18 to 18.2 in the last 30-some years, wow. which tells you maybe officials just self-regulate, that they're only going to call a certain amount of fouls. But you can tell them this is our point of emphasis, but those fouls are going to be even, and style of play, no matter what. It's really interesting, and I don't know the right answer. All I know is we've got 350 Division I institutions, and that's absurd. That's ridiculous. There is no way that 350 different institutions are going to be competitive with each other when they've got all these different mission statements and resources, and there's no way we can administer a game over that. We can't even paint a line on the floor right now. We want to get a charge circle in, and some of the schools don't want it because they don't want to paint it on the floor. They'd have to redo their floor.
Nancy,
you go, wait a minute, you just signed an $11 billion contract. We're talking about the cost of paint and lacquer. But that's, we have too many schools, and not all of them can compete. And if you can't compete, this is a big business too. And there's Division I, there's Division II, there's Division III, there's NAIA, there's all kinds of places to compete. And if we're going to administer this game on the highest level and have high level play, we've got to reduce the number of schools competing, because there's no way to do this with 350. And there's no way 350 schools are competitive with each other. It's just not, the data doesn't suggest that.
Nancy, the reason UConn could win 5 games in a row is, I was telling Chris, just a couple years ago, they were playing 8 games in 5 days in AAU tournaments around the country. Okay? I mean, these kids play, like you said. So that's how you can win 5 games in a row, where Jack and I, 3 games in a row, I mean, we're on the ice bucket for the rest of the week.
At the age of 66, what do you expect?
No, I'm not talking about golf. I'm talking about when we played. Remember back then? We used ice. They have pools of ice now.
Yes, sir.
I'm Bill Arthur, class of '64, and I remember when I was at Duke, sitting at the same cafeteria table with Jeff Mullins, and one time, believe it or not, I actually had to ask Art Heyman to stop shooting baskets in what's now Cameron Indoor Stadium. So
Can't hear you. Yeah, speak up.
I had to ask Art Heyman to stop shooting baskets because my Air Force drill team needed the floor of Cameron, So the athletes were part of the student body. And it seems to me the demands on their time are much greater today, and I'm wondering how much a part of the student body the athletes at Duke are today. And Chris, maybe you're the best one.
Well, I mean, what we try to do, a lot of, and some of the things, that's a good point, because the time demands to be competitive at this level, like all the physicality. I mean, these guys, they have to train, they have to lift weights, they have to obviously do an academic curriculum at Duke. Their days are full. Some of the things we haven't changed, though, is, for instance, a lot of schools have built athletic dorms, where the whole basketball team is separated. Our guys still stay on East Campus with all the freshmen when they come in as incoming freshmen. We try to do as much as we can to integrate our players within the student body, with different activities, with different ways that you can stay connected to your classmates. I think that with Duke only being somewhat of a smaller school, I think that helps. I think sometimes at some of the bigger schools, the athletes can get away from the rest. They can live in their own dorm, they can do their own thing, and they really aren't, other than seeing them on the field or on the court, they're not really connected to the students. And it is harder in today's day and age, though. I don't envy our guys in that regard. Like when we all went to school, we could go to parties on the weekends and be kids and have fun and do stupid things that college kids did. And nowadays with Twitter, with Facebook, with all, I mean, our kids have to be guarded in everything they do, camera phones. And I don't, that's the part of it that I feel for our guys. They're still kids. They're still in college. They're going to make mistakes, and now if you're a high-profile athlete, if you're a basketball player at Duke or one of these you everything you say, everything you do, every action everything is documented, and it's a lot of pressure. And I feel for our guys in that regard, and that's why we try to do as much as we can in how we set out our schedules and to take that pressure off them and allow them to be kids the best that we can. But it is a lot tougher in today's day and age, no question about it.
All right, in the essence of time, we have one more question over here to my right.
Hi, I'm Rob Monyak from class of '86. Just curious to hear what the different panel members, how would they'd answer this question. Why do you think everyone, except for those who went to Duke, hates Duke basketball? Now, let me add two things to that. One is I live in Connecticut now, where people really hate Duke basketball.
Let me ask you a question.
And the second thing is this, but I just want to say, it's not just because Duke's a perennial winner, because there are other perennial winners and have been that are not hated like Duke. So that's...
Name one.
well, UCLA in the 70s.
They haven't won shit lately.
Would you rather be...
Perennial winners, not 60s. Name one. Yankees, people hate them. Right? America. The Middle East hates us.
Look, I'm right. I mean, Carolina is disliked but not hated like Duke. Okay, so.
Why do we care? I'm asked that question a lot, being a member of the media, and my answer is I don't care what you think. What's that? That's why they hate us. No, that's not. That's not why.
That's why they hate him.
I mean, if you believe in what you're doing, and you feel like, I really don't care what other people think. It's nice it's nice to have people pat you on the back and say you're a good guy and doing a good job, but would you rather have it the other way, where everybody likes you and you're just kind of a middling program? I mean, they don't like Duke because Duke's kicking everybody's ass. And I'll tell you that when we were in school, let's not accept ourselves like everybody here hated North Carolina, and everybody in the league hated North Carolina, hated them. And so the idea somehow that we were these happy-go-lucky folks that liked everybody and got along with everybody, I don't believe that for 1 second. Back when we were in college, Carolina had their boot on the neck of the whole league. And when Mark was saying when we first won in 1984, the first time our group had beaten them, and heck, we came back to campus. We were really upset. The only reason I remember the score was there were bumper stickers on every car in Durham that said Duke Blue 77, Carolina Blue 75. And we were like, they don't print up bumper stickers when they beat us. Like, this has to stop. This has to be a normal occurrence. And then when I was an assistant at Duke in '92, I think we were ranked #1, and they beat us, and they stormed the floor. Yeah. And it was like
first time.
That was almost as good as winning. Like, I couldn't believe that. We walked off the floor going, holy shit, what is this? I couldn't believe that. And so it's not, the tables turn and all that stuff, and I would say enjoy people not liking you. That's a good thing.
I've seen I've seen polls that say they say half of what you're saying. Duke is not only the most respected, most well-liked program, it's also the most hated. So, the only way to get there is to, do what we've done.
It's to matter.
Yeah, over the history of this program, I live in Maryland, so Carolina, I don't even worry about Carolina. I got to worry about the Terp fans, but I get that all the time. People ask me where I went to school. I say Duke. The first thing out of their mouth is, "Oh, well, I hate Duke," and I always say, "Well, where'd you go to school?" "Well, Maryland." I go, "Well, if I were you, I would hate Duke too." If I were you, I would hate Duke too. It's
my boy's 14, and for the last 6 or 7 years, whenever Duke would lose, he didn't want to go to school the next day because he heard it, nonstop on the bus. And you know, he's not like me. He's a nice kid. And so he'd always say, "Dad, you know, what do I think? They're giving it to me." And I said, "Just say, you know what? We're really happy for you. That for one day you could feel what it's like to be like us all the time."
All right.
I want to ask
one more. Okay.
I would just add this, which is to summarize all this. If you go around the country making enemies by beating up people, how do you expect them to love you? I mean, that's what Duke does. It goes around and it wins 5 out of every 6 games. It doesn't make any friends when it goes on the road. People come into our building and they make friends. The people from Clemson come in here and they make friends with us. They leave quietly, sneak out at night. They haven't offended anybody. Did you get mad when Clemson came in here and loses? You don't get upset with Clemson. But if you go down to Clemson, they're upset when you leave there. And that's
also, yeah, Jay has a personalized license tag from his son. He gave, it says father. And you know what that means, right? F all Tar Heels, especially Rashid.
Taking an ugly turn here, Bob.
As we said at the beginning, this is being taped, and it will be shown tomorrow night on Comedy Central. So look in your local listings for a night or late afternoon with Kenny. So, but it's been great. Thank you all. You've been a great audience. We appreciate it. Thanks to Mark, Jay, Jack, Kenny, and Mr. Collins on the end. Thank you.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.